stunning, isn't it? In an election year, how many politicians suddenly they find courage, they find clarity, they find common sense, they're acting sane. It's just a remarkable thing. And that's what's happening today down in California. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I'm down 37 pounds on the program, and I lost most of that weight in just 2 months. There's no prepackaged meals, no counting calories, no drugs or injections. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due. I saw this and I thought, good for Gavin Newsom. Those are 4 words you probably will never hear me utter again. Good for Gavin Newsom. This is the headline from the New York Times. Newsom orders California officials to remove homeless encampments. The Times calls it the nation's most sweeping response to the Supreme Court decision last month that gave local leaders greater authority to remove homeless campers. Of course, we talked about that Supreme Court decision at length. It was the Grants Pass case out of Oregon, which we were all on the West Coast in particular watching very closely because the Supreme Court had to decide whether it amounted to cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment to our Constitution to remove people who are sleeping outside from encampments. The Supreme Court said that's not cruel and unusual punishment. And so what did we say at the time? That the ruling could be incredibly significant for West Coast cities in particular, struggling with homelessness, if they have the political will to act on it. Well, Governor Gavin Newsom today says he does indeed have the political will to act on it. Here's a video he posted.
I don't think there's anything more urgent and more frustrating than addressing the issue of encampments in the state of California. Over the course of the last number of years, the state has stepped up, where in the past we provided no support, no resources to cities and counties to clean up encampments like this. Today, we've invested now over $1 billion in encampment resolution grants, not only to clean up sites like this, but to address the underlying issue in the first place. One of the big issues, though, that has been an impediment was the courts. In the past, the courts have denied the ability for local government, including the state, to clean up many of these encampments. Today, I announced an executive order to move the process forward. We're done. It's time to move with urgency at the local level to clean up these sites, to focus on public health and focus on public safety. There are no longer any excuses. $1 billion this state has invested to support communities to clean up these encampments. We have now no excuse with the Supreme Court decision. This executive order is about pushing that paradigm further and getting a sense of urgency that's required of local government to do their job.
Yeah, I would have been impressed with that if he said it 5 years ago, 6 years ago. If anyone in California had taken a forceful position on it, because a lot of what he says in that video is just an outright lie. And it's kind of gross, honestly, that he's having this video after all of this and how bad things have gotten in California. He's out there picking up trash. Like, look at me, rolling up my sleeves and picking up trash. I would have been impressed with that had he done it years ago. Some of the things he said in there that are just outright falsehoods. First of all, the courts did not prevent you from solving the homelessness crisis. They did not. Certainly in Washington state, one of the rulings that we've had to work with is the ruling out of Idaho, out of Boise, Idaho, that said basically you can't remove someone from a tent on the street unless you have shelter to give them, which I think is fair, because where are they going to go? They're just going to take their tent, they're going to set up somewhere else. And so what would happen is police would go out time and time again. They'd offer access to services and shelter. And when someone wouldn't take it, they had the legal authority to remove them. So California has not been completely hamstrung by the courts, where it's like just because of the Supreme Court ruling, now they can finally go out and do all this. And by the way, and clean up trash. He's out there cleaning up trash. There has never been a court ruling that precluded the state of California, the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, or any other state in the union from cleaning up trash from public spaces, along highways, under bridges, in public parks. So that's never something that should have been able to get so bad. The courts always have to do with the person, not the trash that you're out there cleaning up. So that's ridiculous. And then he talks about, there's no excuses anymore. There's been no room for excuses up to this point. So you can say, no excuses, we're going to get this done, like you should have been doing it years ago. The excuses ran out years ago. And then he wants to say, we've now invested $1 billion in trying to solve homelessness. You should not be proud of that. The reason you've had to give more than $1 billion in California to addressing the homeless crisis is because the homeless crisis has gotten so bad. That's what we see in Washington state as well. Remember, Governor Jay Inslee touted his right-of-way initiative, where the state was going to go in and finally clear these encampments that just lined state highways. And then we found out, we crunched the numbers, did a little bit of math, and we found out that it was costing them $1 million per person to remove them from a state right-of-way and get them out of homelessness. And one of the reasons they spent so much on that program is because homelessness has gone completely unmanaged and unchecked in Washington state for more than a decade. It's been slowly getting worse. Everyone with a brain saw it. People who were reasonable said we have to do something about it. We were called NIMBYs. Oh, not in my backyard. You just don't like looking at homeless people. No, we don't like looking at our fellow human beings living in filth and squalor with needles in their arm. Call me right wing, but I just don't think that's very empathetic. So no, Gavin Newsom does not get credit for now all of a sudden saying, oh, the Supreme Court has is letting us do what we should have been doing for the past 10 years. This just allows you to do it with more ease. This just allows you to do it more quickly. And so better now than never, but you don't get credit for that. There are also some limitations to what Gavin Newsom can do. From the New York Times, in his executive order, Mr. Newsom advised California cities and counties on how best to ramp up enforcement on a signature issue of his administration. He cannot force them to take action, but can exert political pressure through billions of dollars the state controls for municipalities to address homelessness. The order also expanded to other state agencies, an approach that the California Department of Transportation has used to clear encampments alongside freeways in the state. Mr. Newsom mandated that state officials not simply move campers along, but also work with local governments to house people and provide services into which the state has pumped billions of dollars. And that is the correct approach. Again, it's just all of this is way too late. And forgive me if I take it personally. I'm going back now 10, 15 years in Seattle as a journalist. Every single time, even when I was a mainstream journalist, that we did stories on how bad the homeless crisis was, we'd be called, oh, right-wing, Fox News, lady hates the homeless, racist, whatever it was. Remember when Como News came out with the Seattle is Dying documentary? Nicole, can you Google what year Seattle is Dying came out? Because Seattle was bad when that happened, but Seattle is much worse now. But remember how Eric Johnson at Como was vilified for the documentary Seattle is Dying? Oh, it's a piece of right-wing propaganda when it was just video. Did you find it?
2019.
That was 5 years ago. He was vilified for just showing video of what Seattle looked like, for just showing video of people in the depths of despair and addiction. Eric Johnson was more vilified for showing someone using drugs and suffering from that than the left vilified drug use. Think about that for a second. They're more angry at Eric in 2019 with Como for showing the drug use than they are with the government for not dealing with the drug use and for just letting people die on our streets. So no, I'm not just going to act like, great job, Gavin Newsom, everything's fine. No, you have accountability that you have to have for the way things have been and how bad the homeless crisis has gotten in California, the same in Oregon, because what did we talk about last month in Oregon? Well, we had voters in Oregon who legalized hard drugs in 2020 or 2021. Then they ended up reversing it because that was a disaster. We gave them credit for the decision to reverse that. But that doesn't mean that they're off the hook for the thousands of people who've overdosed since drugs were legalized. In that, the lost people in those 4 years in Oregon. And then you have the mayor of Portland, Wheeler, who is all about hands-off approach to drugs, to homelessness, to rioting, all of that. And then all of a sudden he has an epiphany. I gave him credit, welcome to Team Common Sense, but you got to give us a mea culpa and you have to learn from your mistakes and understand how things got so bad. You don't just get to wipe your hands and say, nope, it wasn't me. Now I'm the savior. And in an election year, Gavin Newsom, you know what I really think it is? I don't hate to do it. I'm all in these conspiracies lately because it's they always turn out to be true. One of the biggest knocks about Kamala Harris, the presumptive nominee for Democrats for the presidency, is that she is a California lady, that it would be Californication for the entire country. And even Democrats across the country, their brand of being a Democrat, their brand of liberal is not California's. And they don't want to look like California. The failures in California are known across the country. So could it be Gavin Newsom is trying to help his friend Kamala Harris by making sure California is the media is painting California as being on the right track, as being tough on homelessness and tough on drugs and tough on crime in the months leading up to a very important election for Kamala Harris? I don't think that's too far outside the realm of possibility. And I should also note that, when you look at how bad the homeless crisis has gotten, and Gavin Newsom says we're going to go in and we're going to clear up these camps, that's fine. But there's a lot more to it than that. Our homeless crisis on the West Coast isn't just bad because it's pretty here and the weather's nice and people want to come here and be homeless and the access to services and all of that stuff. It's much deeper than that. There's homelessness elsewhere in the country, but it's way worse here. That's indisputable. So yes, the policies around the access to services is certainly part of it. But it's the way in which there's a hands-off law enforcement approach to people who are out there living on the streets, doing drugs in the throes of a mental health crisis. Nobody's out there saying, hey, we're going to force you into treatment. We're going to make sure that you get help for your mental illness, but you can't sit here on the corner of 3rd and Pine screaming at tourists. We're not going to allow that. So there's this really permissive environment up and down the West Coast that has allowed these issues to become so severe, so complex, to soak up billions and billions and billions of dollars in taxpayer funds. And no one from Jay Inslee to Gavin Newsom gets to all of a sudden claim that they're on top of it. And Bob Ferguson, spare me. He's running for governor, our attorney general. He has been permissive of all of this. He's never come out in the last 12 years and said, hey, Democrats, as a leading Democrat, we really ought to be doing more. This isn't empathetic. Our state looks horrible. We need to do something. And now he's running for governor and he's running ads suggesting like, I'm the guy for the job. Give me a break. Give me a break. So it's good that Gavin Newsom is utilizing the Supreme Court ruling. We'll see how it goes, right? But don't be fooled. Please don't be fooled to think that he's doing something righteous or he's leading the way across the United States. No, that is a crisis that has brewed for decades because of failed leadership, including his own failed leadership as a lifelong politician in the state of California.